The most horrific thing about this film is its terribly convoluted plot. I'm talking about The Haunting of Crestview High, but you may know it as Bad Kids Go to Hell. So, in the UK, it's known as The Haunting of Crestview High, but I think pretty much everywhere else it's Bad Kids Go to Hell. And that's probably more of an apt title, in all fairness, but the premise here, I guess you would call it a mixture between The Breakfast Club with a kind of horror twist, a little bit like, I guess, Final Destination perhaps. The story here is this group of quite unlikable misfits, rich kids have to sort of go to this detention, this kind of large prestigious school basically, and whether they're kind of through a kind of series of events, they're essentially locked in this particular school, and you know they decide to do a seance. And there's basically a kind of a bit of backstory about this kind of Native American chap who had been mistreated somewhat, so it will kind of get revealed, and the kids start dying one by one basically, and we're kind of led to believe, is there some kind of supernatural presence, or is there a murderer, or is it something else completely different? Is it just random chance? All will be revealed. And that's pretty much the plot. So, you know, what problems do I have with this film? Well, it thinks it's quite clever. It thinks it's a clever movie with this kind of quite intricate plot, but unfortunately, it's the plot, although it thinks it's clever, is just so reliant on circumstance and chance, and it just becomes ridiculous, unfortunately, and you just can't take the things that are happening on screen seriously because it's so sort of outlandish and so kind of convoluted, as I've said. You just can't buy it, unfortunately. Add to the fact that the majority of the characters in this film are just unlikable. They're unlikable people. They're meant to be these kind of maybe rich sort of bratty kids, apart from, of course, the one misunderstood bad boy, basically. And, you know, they're sort of standard sort of stereotypes. I mean, ironically enough, this film actually has Judd Nelson in it, who was obviously in Breakfast Club, and they actually even make a reference to it, saying this is not the Breakfast Club, essentially. But it really kind of is still taking those sort of particular stereotypes, and it has these kind of like random flashbacks which kind of give you this sort of backstory about this kind of backstory about all this kind of plot about what's happening, about how these kids are sort of connected basically. And it's just, unfortunately, the flashbacks are possibly the worst part of the film for a number of reasons. For some of them, they have this kind of very sort of unusual comedy in them, and you know, comedy is not always a bad thing, but it just seems slapstick some of the time and kind of just ridiculous comedy, whilst in the kind of, I guess, the present era you don't really have that at all, so it kind of, there's a sort of a tonal shift that doesn't kind of make sense. And as I say, the kind of the backstory here is so convoluted, it relies so much on sort of coincidence, you just can't buy it. And the characters that we have are pretty much one-dimensional. They all have their kind of defining characteristics, but for some reason, you know, some of them will just do random things and just seem. I mean, there's one girl, for example, who's meant to be this kind of like fairly intelligent but nerdy girl, suddenly decides to sort of strip off in class, and it's basically, we're told, because it's for stress. And it's just, what? It's just stupid. In regards to actual horror and gore, there's not a lot of actual horror here, I would have to say. There is a few gore shots, but like I said, some of it's kind of played for laughs, and you know, they would have been better to sort of keep the tone, you know, fairly serious, and maybe sort of dial down the drama for these people who we really don't care about, because, you know, these characters aren't designed to be likeable, so you're not invested into them, unfortunately. In regards to the acting, although I don't think it's terrible, it's certainly not stellar either. I mean, the actors here are clearly in their kind of mid-20s, playing like 17-year-olds, and again, that kind of suspension of disbelief, unfortunately, you know, it's just a little bit too much to take. Like I said, I think it has some good ideas here. I think maybe the kind of the mystery and the kind of the sort of premise of what potentially could have happened, it, you know, may have been quite good. It's actually based on a graphic novel, which I don't know, because I've not read it. I can't tell you how, you know, faithful an adaptation this actually is. But you know, I've never heard of this graphic novel, and you know, I'm assuming that it's obviously got its fans, but I didn't think this was particularly well translated onto film, so I don't know how good the graphic novel is, if you see what I mean. So, unfortunately, I kind of found this quite a tiresome film to sit through and not very enjoyable. Although it does have, like I say, a germ of a good idea. And the settings are quite nice. I have to say, the sort of set design, the kind of location shooting here is all pretty good, and it kind of has a kind of nice sort of gothic-y feel to it. And there are quite a lot of twists and turns, even though, like I said, they're so sort of like built up on these series of events having to play out precisely. And just far too conveniently, it just kind of takes me out of the movie somewhat. So I'm going to give this movie a 4.5 out of 10. It has some good positives to it, but I have to say, the whole concept and the way it was executed to me just took this as a minute below average film. So 4.5. What did you think of it? If you've seen it, leave me a comment, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.